Hi, Sean. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Tiff?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm on my second cup of coffee already this morning because I went to a hockey game last night, which I haven't been to in years.
Oh, that sounds fun. Who did you see?
So as you know, I'm located in Toronto. So I went to see the Leafs
Right.
play the Boston Bruins. And I know you were catching up earlier, and I've been watching hockey my entire life, but I'm still very watching and having interest, two different things. So it was fun to watch because I haven't been in so long, but I'm not very knowledgeable about it. But have you been to a game recently or?
Not hockey. I grew up watching hockey in my hometown. I feel like the way that I've handled sports in the last 10 years or so is I feed off one. I want to be entertained. So I spent a lot of my childhood being angry or upset when my team loses, and I'm like, this is an entertainment thing. I should do this for fun and not get stressed out about it. So one, I always want it to be fun, and so I kind of, because of that, I feel like I end up following teams that I like only really when they're doing well. And then there's another aspect to that, which is located in a city where there's a team. If the team is doing well, it's like there's this energy in the city that you can totally build off of, and then it's really hard to ignore what's going on. And so I recently, I should say, I grew up playing football and American football, and grew up a Cincinnati Bengals fan, and they have been terrible my entire life. And just these last 2 years, they last year they made a run all the way to the Super Bowl, and then this year just lost last week, but made another really good run into the playoffs. So it's been really fun to follow that team, partially because one, because they win a lot, which is really fun, and two, because there's just a lot of local energy here. And I was able to get to one of the games this year. They tend to get really expensive, so getting out there just one is really nice.
Nice.
So that's where I've been in my sports world for the last year or two.
I like that. It's so true. I'm the same. When your city's team is in playoffs or they're doing really well, you can't help but just get immersed in that excitement too. Even if you're not, or in my case anyways, typically a fan or hardcore fan, you all of a sudden become one. You're like, okay, this is amazing. And
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
all right. Well, on a different note, I know you have an exciting demo for us or POC that you have up on the screen here. So let's just dive right into it.
Great. Okay. So I came across this post the other day, which I don't have pulled up, but there was a release for this library called React Text. What's it called? React Text Balancer, I believe is what it is. In fact, I just installed it. So let's make sure I'm saying the word. Oh no, it's wrong. React Wrap Balancer is this package, and it's built for React. It's optimized for Next.js sites. At least that's what I read earlier this week. And so I thought it was a really interesting topic, and so I wanted to put together a quick little demo, just using our minimal JavaScript starter. And so in this case, I have the content from my homepage, which is stored in Markdown, just so it's easy and we can see it. And if I were to replace this hero heading here, this is right here in my index.md file. And what happens a lot, and the problem that's being solved is that with CSS, you set the size of your heading or your text, wherever it might be. But in the particular case of headings, that it's a dynamic sort of situation. You can think of this as in a blog. You can have a blog post title that might only have a word or two, and then you might have some that are really long. Especially if you're optimizing for SEO, you're going to fall in that 60-ish characters range, and so you're going to have several different. You're going to have several words, and those words might be at different sizes and depending on the font and shape. Point being, you can end up in weird situations where you have only one or two words hanging over, which let's see if we can actually make that happen. So if I just add some placeholder text here, I'll save this, and then I should see my my heading here will get a little bit longer. All right, here's a great example.
Perfect.
So I have this hanging I have this hanging word here, and it looks a little bit goofy.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, okay, well, that looks good. And if I resize this way, well, that's as big as it's going to get. So um, it's at full size. It's like, well, maybe I wanted to say this, but am I having to change the content as a result of the code or the
Mhm.
limitations of the styling? And so this React wrap balancer is trying to help us balance the amount of text that is in each line. It's basically what it's doing is it will calculate the minimum width that it can use, and then programmatically set that width. And I'll show you what I mean. So you can do this in any component. We just import this balancer component from React wrap balancer. And then we can wrap this with the balancer component. And when we save that, you see immediately it just shifted this. So now I've got I've got this balance between these lines. And if we were to, let's say if I were going to make this a little bit shorter, refresh my page, that now it's balanced, but it's done so on 2 lines. And so as we get, if I can resize here, as we get smaller, this move right here would typically just bump 1 line or 1 character down, one word down on the last line. We'd have that hanging character or hanging word. Yeah. And so this is just being as balanced as it can be. So I think this is really cool and definitely something to consider in your React project. They've spent a lot of time, the developers of this particular library have spent a lot of time really working on the algorithm for it and the performance for it. So they want to make sure that it's accurate and it's always going to work and give you the best balance that it can give you. But secondarily, they want to make sure that it can work really well. Specifically what they're trying to avoid is this flash of unstyled content, or this basically like a layout shift, more or less. So what they're doing some cool stuff in there. So if you're, I believe the way it works is if you are using server components, that it's going to inject a style, a script tag right next to the element on the page. But if you're using, if you're using the more traditional React approach or Next.js approach, that it's going to use the use layout effect hook in React, I believe. So it runs immediately. Now, the reason I find this so interesting, one, I think it's really cool and it's a great solution for balancing and for like presenting your content in the best way that you can. And if you're using Next, highly encourage it. There's a fundamental question that comes with this, which is this the role of JavaScript? Should JavaScript have a play in this particular approach? Because when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that's cool. That's something that CSS should be doing. This has nothing to do with interactivity. It's, we're getting to the point with CSS where we're introducing container queries and we're able to set styles based on context a lot more than we were a few years ago. And so there's actually a proposal out there for a text wrap property, and to be able to use, I believe it's going to be called balance would be the value that, so you could just say something like, where's my CSS file? Here's my hero. I could say something like text wrap balance, and then we would get the same effect. So that's not live yet. It's still in the proposal phase, and I'm not sure which stage it's at or anything like that. But this is a great solution for the interim, and also kind of a hint of how we can use JavaScript to drive changes in CSS. So check it out and see if you can apply it to your project. And that's what I've got this week.
That is amazing. It's, it's seems like a no-brainer, and I'll be the first to attest. There's been so many times, even so many, I'm not gonna say so many, but tickets written for me with the marketing or design team coming in and being like, Tiff, at this screen size, this exact problem happening, at this screen size on mobile,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
one word, we need this copy to stay the same, but it can't be. And it's so frustrating. Like, okay, let me go back in the CSS. And even as you mentioned, writing different queries for different screen sizes, it depending on the device, and it's, how deep your QA wants to get into it and really grill you. This is a huge time saver. So I always feel like I should have, that emoji of a grandma when I talk about this, like back in the day. But
Yeah.
this is such a huge time saver.
Absolutely, because I mean, even if you get that ticket and you change the raw CSS,
Yeah,
now you have to test everywhere else that that's used, and so then
exactly.
what do you end up writing custom CSS just for that one particular page or post? Yeah, it gets messy. So this is a nice interim solution. I don't think it's where we're going, but I think it's a good place to be right now.
Exactly. It's exciting that, we're really thinking about it. And like you said, it's another step in the right direction.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. And what do you have for us this week, Tiff?
All right. So for me this week, I wanted to start by sharing with you that we had two webinars this week. So the first one, the webinars I've been speaking about for a while, they happened. They were really great. We had one on Tuesday with Contentstack, and I'll link the recording down below so you can catch up with that. It was myself, Dan, and Nick from Contentstack, and it was I was speaking to Dan about it afterwards, and he's like, "How do you think it went?" It seemed like it went really well, and I was like, "That was my favorite webinar that we've ever done. The conversation just
Wow.
flowed really well." Nick came in and was super excited and is so passionate about headless CMSs and the making it a user-friendly experience for everyone on the team, especially for content editors, and then how we integrate Stackbit into that process. It was just a very insightful conversation. So this conversation is for anyone who wants to not only learn more about how Stackbit and Contentstack work together, but I'd highly encourage anyone who is just curious about hearing more about Stackbit and Contentstack in a very organic and low barrier to entry, I guess you could say, way. Just it's a really
Okay.
nice conversation. So, and then the other webinar that happened this week was with with myself and Retool. So Christina from Retool. And I'm not going to share with you exactly what the demos are. You can see down below, but I will say, I'll give a little hint. I'm not going to give it away, but for her demo, she is using Chat GPT, which is, very trending right now. So
Very,
it's very
very
cool.
trending. Yes.
Yeah. And for my demo, I spent a lot of time this week with our solutions engineer, Joe, who is really talking and building this demo for separating your presentation layer from your data layer. And I got to be honest with you, it took me a little bit to wrap my head around like the actual, how should I say, the actual problem that this architecture solves. I was like, this is a no-brainer. Storing content in a headless CMS should be reusable, especially when you are thinking of scaling. You should be able to use that content in multiple places. But when you start tying the presentation layer so closely to that content, it gets very difficult, if sometimes not impossible, to scale. So what he's done is he's made a demo. He's still working on it, but essentially you can use so he's using JSON in this example, which we spoke about. You're like, what is he using? So it is JSON, just to let you know, for the presentation layer. And then the data layer he's storing in Contentful. So I'm going through that demo and talking a little bit more about it. So it's a really great webinar to listen to. And we also are sharing two other technologies that are unrelated to Retool and Stackbit that we both love and help with your day-to-day development process. So I'll link those down below.
Very cool. Yes, yes. Excited to check out that Retool video, and Joe and I have been talking a bit about that problem as well, or his suggested solution. And I think I heard from him right after the webinar yesterday, and he said that he already has new ideas about what he wants to try next. So I think we'll explore some future demos, and so I would encourage you all to come back, because we'll have more demos, we'll have posts, and all on the subject, because it's a really fascinating concept.
Exactly, exactly. And last thing I'll quickly say, I know I got talking a lot about that because I get really excited, but last thing I'll say is our design team, along with many others, have been working on updating our Stackbit website. So if you haven't checked out our Stackbit homepage and website, it looks so good. There's a lot of great updates. So I'll link that down below too.
All right. Fantastic.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. I hope you have a great day.
All right. You do the same. Thanks, Tiff.
Talk soon.